Hello and welcome to this OECD session with me, Duncan Crawford. Thank you so much for joining us for what is a session as part of the launch of Digital Education Outlook. The focus of this session is on how digital technologies can help revolutionize assessment to support student learning, which is the aim of the OECD's new Platform for Innovative Learning Assessments, or PILA for short. Student assessments are obviously an important part of teaching and learning. PILA gives teachers the ability to use and design learning experiences and adapt how they assess student competencies for the 21st century. It's an open source platform where you can see in real time the choices students are making, analyze data, produce performance reports, and much more. I'm glad to say I'm joined by a virtual panel of guests to discuss all of this and much more as well. Joining us on the panel today from Switzerland, Engin Bumbacher is Hasler Professor of Computer Science Education at University of Teacher Education, Vaud. Tatiana Laganá, an education consultant from Brazil with expertise in pedagogy. From Brussels, Anuska Ferrari, an expert in digital education and a team leader at the Directorate General for Education, Youth, Sport and Culture at the European Commission. And Emma Linsenmeyer, an OECD analyst in the PISA Research and Innovation team who co-leads the PILA project. Thank you all for joining us. Before we start, a message to those of you who are watching, please do get involved. You can use the chat function at the bottom of your screens to send in any questions or comments you have, and we will try to get through as many of those as possible. Now, though, let's kick things off. First, the OECD's Emma Linsenmeyer is going to demonstrate how the new PILA platform works. Over to you, Emma.
Thanks, Duncan. So let me share my screen. I have the pleasure today to introduce the OECD's new open source and free to use learning and assessment platform. We began developing this platform in 2021 with an international network of experts like Engin and Tatiana, with edtech developers, different schools, teachers, and students, all thanks to the support of 5 different foundations in Germany and Brazil. Being on the PISA team, we know that large-scale summative assessment can be beneficial for helping education systems to create better education policies. However, this type of assessment model does not directly improve student learning. For this, we need formative assessment. So this is why we've developed the Platform for Innovative Learning Assessments to show that embedding competency-based and personalized assessment can be into digital learning experiences can be beneficial for learning. So what exactly is the Platform for Innovative Learning Assessments? As Duncan has already said, it's open source, and it's also free to use. What we mean by open source is that all of the content and material is available for use by different users, and they can improve on this material. And we work in PILA, we have engaging learning tasks that have this built-in assessment. And so we can work then with national teams, countries, to map these different tasks onto the national curricula. And this can ensure that the use of the platform is extremely useful for teachers and students. And now, of course, teachers are the heart of this platform because they're the ones who know their students best. They know what kind of information they need from their students. So we've worked hard to create customizer tools that allow them to adapt the learning and assessment material to their own needs and their students' needs, but also to their local contexts. So our hope is that this platform can grow into an area where they can share not only the different digital learning and assessment material they create with it, but also to talk about how they integrate it into their own lessons. And finally, we've created functionalities that allow researchers to collect data in flexible and secure ways, but also to develop new and innovative learning and assessment tools. And PILA is organized by applications. So we currently have 3 different applications here, and they comprise these interactive open-ended learning tasks. And so they help us target and measure a range of different 21st century competencies like computational thinking, creative thinking, self-regulated learning. But they also help us understand students' mastery of different concepts in specific subjects like math and science. So now I'm going to show you how it all works. Let me open. This is the PILA website. So here you can find more information about the different applications that exist. You can try out some of the tasks and tools that I've been talking about without creating an account. But if you're a teacher and you want to use PILA in your classroom, what you'll want to do is go into the login button here and create an account. So we have different providers with which you can do this, but I'll be using Google. And I'll sign into my teacher account. And when it's your first time creating an account, you will receive a pop-up where you need to accept the terms of use and also read through the data protection notice for PILA. And here you can see the teacher portal. And so the first thing that we want teachers to do is to go in and create an encryption keyword. This is very important to us because we want to protect, of course, student data. And so all of their data is saved in our databases as anonymous IDs. But in order for this to be useful for teachers, they need to be able to see which students are which when they're logged into their secure account. So you can enter an encryption code, and this will allow you to see, instead of anonymous IDs, you see your actual student names. The second thing you'll need to do as a teacher is link students to you. So this is how students will be able to interact with PILA. I need to accept that I've read the data protection notice, and it populates a unique teacher ID. So I'll need to copy this, and then taking off my teacher hat and putting on my student hat, I'll go to a new browser and I'll sign in as if I'm a student. And I'll use, similarly, Google. And now I need to go to my assignments. So the next step for teachers would be, now that I have my students, I have a few who've connected, I need to create a class. So you see here that I have multiple classes, that perhaps I have multiple periods within which I want to use PILA, but I also might have a case where I have a 5th grade class and it's period 2, but I have 2 different groups of students and I want them to focus on slightly different versions of material. So I'm going to put Sheer, Teo, and Emma into this class. And the next step would be to go to the assignment. So in the assignment tab, we're able to create a new assignment and give it a name. So I'm going to name this one the PILA launch demo. And from here, the teacher needs to select content. So this modal opens up the item library. You can see there are different activities that span different applications, such as Betty, Canley, and Carol. And here I want the group of students that I've selected to work more on computational problem solving. And I know they like to make games, so I'm going to assign a series of tasks that help them learn more and show me what they can do in computational problem solving in a game making environment. So now that I've done this, I'm going to assign it to 5th grade period 2 group 2, the group I just made, and I'll save that assignment. So now, putting back on my student hat, I'll go into my account, my student account, and I should see my assignment. So let me just make sure I'll assign it to all of my classes. There we are. Voila. So now I'll open this assignment. And as a student, I'll start working. So I want to show you level 1. This is the PILA game creator powered by Canley, which is developed by Enlightware, a company in Switzerland. And the idea is that students are able to add different elements into a game-like world, like here, and program them using an event-based programming language to make it interactive and playable. So we hope that this type of experience is very interactive and engaging for students. So to begin, I'll start by doing the first sub-goal. I'll add a new platform, and I'll drag it into the environment. And so an important part of PILA is that we want to give feedback to students. So this is feedback to me as a student that in game design, in a game design competence, I'm able to design a level, and I'm at the second level of this, which is why we see a silver badge. And so I can create a level with multiple paths and rooms. And in PILA, we've worked with experts like Engin and also developers of these types of interesting learning environments to come up with solid competency frameworks that can provide this type of feedback to students. So you can see in game design, there are different facets of the competency framework, as well as for computational thinking. So things like conditionals, variables, state, important skills that they need to be able to think computationally. And you can see that there are different levels, as I was just explaining. The first level, the student would receive a bronze badge, the second level, a silver, and the third, a gold. And so we've tried to make this very student accessible in a language that would be appropriate for secondary level students. But importantly, this also can be mapped onto national curricula. So for example, this computational thinking facet has been mapped onto the Swiss curriculum. And you can see exactly what learning goal within the curriculum it's mapped to. So let me go back to the experience. So here I'm going to continue programming. So now this is the programming interface. I need to program, it's been programmed to move left when a user clicks on the left-hand arrow, but now I want to make sure the character can move right. So I will add the different blocks. You can see it's very interactive. It gives me feedback. And I've earned another badge, and I get immediate feedback that this subgoal has been met. But as a student, I might not know where to go next. So we have developed an adaptive hint system that allows the student to get feedback on what else they need to be doing. So this is helping me understand that to program that when I press A, the character will jump. But I need to make sure it jumps high enough, so I'll increase the velocity, the strength of the velocity. And finally, I can test my game. So let's see if, oh, yep, I can move right, I can jump, I can move left, etc. So now I will go back to the student account. Let me just move. There we go. I'll go back to the teacher account because I might want to see how my other students are doing in this activity. So I'll open my dashboard. And this provides some information about where the different students are on the different levels. I'm looking specifically at level 1, but you can see that Emma, I just made it through the first set of sub-goals. And I did it within 2 minutes, and it's yellow because I used a hint. So you can see Marta, for example, moved through the first level. She took a little bit more time on the first set of sub-goals. Maybe she was getting acclimated with the programming language, and then she gets to the second one quite easily and does not use a hint. But as part of this, you can also see how they're doing in their competencies. So what level are students achieving in the different facets of the various competencies that we're looking at. And you might be wondering what this looks like for a larger class. So this is actually a dashboard with a different set of activities where we asked teachers to, in Thailand, we were doing a teacher workshop last week. We asked them to create different games with Canly. So you can see the different kind of ranges of how they were doing as they were moving through the games. You can also actually view what a teacher was creating. So this helps teachers understand what exactly the screen of the student looks like, what type of game are they creating, and maybe where they need help in the programming or in the design of this game. So now I will go back to, if it'll let me, exit full screen. I'll go back to my teacher account to show the last element that I want to highlight in the demo today, which is the customization elements of PILA. This is a very important aspect because we want to make sure that the content and the assessments are in the hands of teachers. So not only can they decide what type of expert content they want to ask their students to work through, but they can also create their own content. So for example, we have customizer tools for each of our applications. The one that the Canly, the game creator by Canly, is still under development. But I'll open the Carol one, which is another application that focuses on computational problem solving and self-regulated learning. And so what teachers can do is go in and actually create new types of tasks. They can put in instructions, add hints, add tags to define what exactly the students are supposed to do in that task. But they can also compile discrete tasks into larger activities. For example, here we have an activity about Carol moving around, and it's a beginner activity. And so this is very important because right now we're working on the functionalities to allow that teachers to share not only what they're making in terms of content and assessment, but also to be able to share how they're integrated into the lessons, as I said earlier. So now I will go back into, stop sharing. And so where are we headed next with PILA? We'll continue to expanding the items and the applications that we have available, working with, of course, an expanding international network of teachers, students, and researchers. And we hope to target a wider range of 21st century competencies. But we really do believe that the power of this tool is in the hands of the national institutions, the schools, and teachers that will use this tool. So we're at the OECD, we'll be focusing on managing the further development of the technologies and also the assessment side. But then we want to train the people, the users in the different countries who will actually be using it and adapting it so that they're able to do this to meet the needs of their students and also make it applicable to their local contexts. So thank you.
Thank you so much.
And let me just, let me just share. Sruti will be putting in I think it'll work. We'll be putting directions into the chat so that you can email us with your name and school institution to be able to receive an access code to then access and use the platform as of tomorrow. Thanks.
Thank you so much for that, Emma. So everyone, scribble down that address, get your login details and sign in and get using the new PILA platform. Looks fantastic. Thank you again to Emma for that presentation. There's something for everyone there, and obviously a range of possibilities about how that platform can be used. And I think the demonstration reflects or it raises a lot of issues that will confront teachers or do confront teachers on a regular basis, how to ensure that teachers can assess kids to make sure that they have the skills they need in the future, and how to ensure that the data in these kinds of platforms is useful to teachers, because there is so much data involved quite often. So let's bring in our panelists and get some reaction from them. First up, let's turn to Engin Bumbacher from the University of Teacher Education Vaud. Let's start with you, because you supported the development of this platform, I understand. Carol the Turtle, the application you were involved in, and your research has included looking at technologies for teaching and assessment. So in your view, how beneficial are platforms such as PILA for improving student learning and assessment?
Okay, so I think I can answer the question. I can also otherwise talk for 5 minutes about sort of my vision. Which one do you want? Direct response or sort of the bigger picture view?
Give the bigger picture.
The bigger picture view. Okay. So I think the core idea is, and Tatiana will talk much more about the 21st century competencies and what is involved when it comes to teaching for today's challenges, which involves very much the question of how do we get students ready to engage in processes where they have to make complex decisions in situations where they might not have all the information necessary. That's what we call 21st century competencies, for example, among others. And one aspect that I have very much focused on is the question of how to develop critical thinking, creative problem solving in STEM domains. And here's now the challenge, like, okay, these are very complex, interrelated competencies. Tatiana will talk more about that. One question is, how do we design learning experiences that develop such complex constructs like decision-making in, for example, creative problem solving, where all these, like, you need different kinds of knowledge, skills, metacognition, attitudes. And the second question is, well, how do you measure and evaluate those? If already teaching is hard, how can we measure those constructs to identify student struggles, to identify situations or student needs, and identify the efficacy of teaching approaches? So here's a study that I really very much like in thinking about what are good learning experiences. Michael Ford and colleagues, they looked at how do you teach scientific practices and inquiry, the skill of understanding or the competencies of understanding how to ask a scientific question and then examine that empirically. What they found, they compared two approaches, and they found that the prevalent approach of reducing those competencies does not really work in terms of transfer. That means reducing means, okay, you have the complex thing of, like, let's say scientific inquiry, running an experiment. You decompose it into sub-pieces, knowing how to control a variable, knowing how to measure something. You teach them separately, and then you hope to bring it back together again. What they found is that this approach does not generalize. Instead, you need very carefully designed learning experiences that focus on the decision-making approaches. For example, don't tell the students what variable to measure. Ask them, here's a question, how could we answer that? What are the kind of variables we should measure? How can we operationalize that? They found that if you do that, and if you do that in a very scaffolded, careful way, students learn to use the competencies they developed and generalize them, apply them in a transfer context, in another kind of situation. And designing such experiences is really hard, is challenging, requires a lot of effort, resources, and iterations. But those kind of challenges are also needed for assessment. Because now we talk about competencies that are processes. Students have to figure out something. They have to debug maybe a code. They have to maybe take apart a certain machine to understand what are the different pieces of that machine to then fix it. So these are processes, and what we found in research is that validated pen and paper assessments are not really capable anymore of capturing the full set of those kind of competencies required. They're only predictive of student performance in these more complex tasks to a certain extent. We have examined that, for example, in computational thinking. But what is cool is when you have now these complex tasks and you have those in technologies, you can get process data. You can start to see how students go about those kind of processes. And so you get high granular data on the cognitive metacognitive processes. But here's the catch. Much research is still required to understand how to design these tasks, how to make sense of the process data that comes in. I'll talk more about that when we talk about the challenges. And how to use that context to also provide really insightful and actionable information to the teachers in real time. And that's what I think is so exciting about Carol, is so exciting about PILA, because it does these three things. It is an environment that allows us to design complex learning tasks by helping students at the same time focus on the key practices. So we take away the unnecessary processes for learning, but necessary for execution, like, for example, executing a code, and we help them focus on the key decision-making processes. The second is we get process data automatically in the system, and we can design very different kind of tasks. And key for me is, as a researcher, because we do not have the context yet to really develop, we don't have the full understanding yet in the framework to know how to design and make sense of the data. PILA is this context where we can vary all the different components and systematically test.
Okay, thank you so much for that, Engin. And that was a very good detailed description of sort of the lay of the land. Let's bring in Tatiana Laganá, education consultant, to get your view on this. Part of your work's involved using technology to enhance curriculum and assessment. I'd like to get your reflections on what Engin just said, but also, do digital tools, in your view, make a big difference to the quality of student assessments?
So, okay, thank you. So Engin brought like a digital view of those competences. So, but I think it's very important if we start defining what those 21st competences are. So they are not only knowledge, but also skills and attitudes that are necessary for living and working in the 21st century. So they might be familiar for most of you, but broadly speaking, it involves high-order skills like creativity, collaboration, metacognition, as Engin has just mentioned. But okay, Engin gave a digital view of that, but just to better address the assessment of those competences, let's take a practical example. So we can imagine a group of students that is going to work on an environmental problem, let's say. So in this situation, the students will have to investigate, to evaluate, and to propose a solution for an environmental problem that they have in their local community. So, for instance, they identify pollution of a nearby river, and they decide to work together and to tackle this problem together. So here is collaboration. So this is what we mean by the 21st century competence. So although working collaboratively, some students may set personal goals aligned with their learning preferences, and here it comes metacognition. Then students are very encouraged to think creatively and propose and come up with an innovative solution, let's say. So in the end, they will have to propose and to communicate their findings for the community. So here, with this example, I would like to highlight some important points that can be seen as a challenge to incorporate those 21st skills in the curricular framework. So first is something that Engin has already mentioned, that these competences are very interconnected. So this is very hard to take isolated measured about those competences. So the interconnection between those competences might be one of the difficulties or the challenges in including them in the curricular framework. Also, the traditional assessments might not capture those skills very well. So from this example that I bring, I addressed a real-world problem where the students act like a scientist, mastering those 21st competences. So in this way, we need to expand assessments beyond the static and closed response format tasks that we usually see in the large-scale assessments. And to do so, it's very crucial to identify those situations where these competences are visible. And I think this is the aim of PILA. So to offer a digital environment with situations that resemble a real-world problem where these students can master those skills. So PILA proposes learning experiences where we can observe, measure independently, and separate those competences. So I think this is the broad view of PILA.
Thank you so much for that, Tatiana. I want to bring in, or at least hear the European Commission's perspective on this, and we're lucky to have Anuska Ferrari with us to get just that. Anuska, PILA shows off some of the innovative ways that teachers can assess students. Is that something that the European Commission is pushing for, this kind of digital assessment, for it to become more common, or is that what most EU member states are pushing for too?
Yeah, thank you, Duncan, for this question, and thank you for having me here today. I have to say that the Commission is taking, if you want, a new approach to digital education and skills as a whole. So this is what I'm going to briefly talk to you about, and I'll tell you how digital assessment is integrated into this. So we came out in 2020 with a digital education action plan that would cover the area from 2021 to 2027. And within this plan, we're looking in particular at two specific things: how digital education is supporting the ecosystem, so the change, if you want, the innovation that is brought to the ecosystem, and on the other hand, we are looking at how we are developing digital skills and competencies. So in a way, I think that both parts, both pillars, both strategic priorities that we have in the action plan have a lot to do with this, with digital assessment and with PILA in particular. So here in PILA, you are presenting us with a platform that provides not only a learning experience, but also a way of assessing this learning experience in a formative way and providing feedback to students. And you're also talking about assessment of 21st century skills, which is, in my view, very well connected with digital skills. So going back to the policy actions and the policy initiatives that we have, as I was saying, we adopted in 2020 this digital education action plan that provides, in a way, a vision on digital education that is based on two values, high quality and inclusiveness. So the idea is that digital education has to be of high quality for everyone. And I think this is very well exemplified in what we have seen. The advantage of this integrated system is the fact that they can provide high quality for everyone, or everyone that can adopt them, let's put it this way. Now, we are looking at times into the aspect of assessment, but what we are doing is simply proposing recommendations to member states. So basically, we're not doing the legislation directly when it comes to curricula or when it comes to assessment, but what we can provide is support to the member states. And this kind of support we provided with recently with two council recommendations that were adopted by council just 3 weeks ago. And one of them is on the key enabling factors of successful digital education and training. There, I think it is important, if we look at this recommendation, to look at capacity building. And I think that basically this is one of the things that I think is very relevant when we think about those platforms, when we think about implementing those platforms. So what is important is the uptake that these solutions may have. And what is fundamental is the capacity building of teachers, of educators, but also of educational institutions, in taking into account what comes from research that Engin was talking about, or reflections on the skills that Tatiana was talking about. So it is important to have this onboarding of teachers and educators. And what I also think is very important, and this is what we are supporting, is having national or, where relevant, regional strategies for digital education. Because if this is not integrated in a coherent and cohesive way at the level of the member states, then all of these innovative approaches will just remain for a few and will not be for everyone to take advantage of. Now, when it comes specifically to assessment, so I was talking about these two council recommendations. A council recommendation, as the words say, is simply a recommendation. So this is what we suggest member states to do. We are also suggesting them to have structured assessment of digital skills, among which we are including informatics and computational thinking. So I see that in PILA you have computational problem solving. Tatiana was talking about cooperation or collaboration, and this is part of the recommendations that we provide to the member states. Definitely many member states are looking into this type of platforms or similar type of platforms. But I think that, as I was saying before, we're still at the beginning of adoption. So I think it is important to ensure that this adoption is not just anecdotal, it's not just for those schools or those students that can afford having these innovative approaches. And the problem that we are facing very often, and was very much highlighted during the COVID crisis 3 years ago, is the one of ensuring that ensuring the mainstreaming, ensuring that every student has an equal chance for being in a system that is pushing for innovation.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Anuska, for that. So setting out the direction of travel for Europe in the years ahead there. Let's move on in this discussion. Let's focus now on some of the challenges concerning assessments that use digital technologies. One of the big issues is just the amount of data that can be collected, how to manage it, how it's used, who sees it. So let's bring back in Professor Engin Bumbacher. What's the solution here, Engin, to ensure that teachers can make sense of all the data that's collected?
Well, Duncan, I unfortunately can't give you the solution in terms of how to do what they should do. What I can tell you is that I think, and this is the reason why I'm excited about PILA, the solution right now will be building a research program together or embedded in technology that allows us to do research in the wild. Because why? As mentioned before, we are entering new terrain with these tasks that we use for both teaching and learning using process data. There has been research of more than 20 years, but actually now but much more amplified with the new tools coming out. And we simply do not have the research frameworks and understanding yet for tackling some of the key challenges that are really interesting in themselves. So let me just use an example quickly. Technology is now, as we mentioned before, it's almost like a microscope into the learning and problem solving in action, and also at the same time, a tool for students to use. And now when we think about programming, that has been one of the domains I looked at. When it comes to debugging, you have a pen and paper task. Well, you have to do the debugging all in your head mentally. You have to simulate it, and that's not really how you solve it. And that's not really a way necessarily of giving us insight into the problem-solving processes. Instead, with a tool, you can start doing binary search. You can like engage with the program. You can systematically narrow down the scope of a bug by testing and refining, and then try different approaches to fix that problem. Well, here's really three challenges that come up that we have to address with research. How to analyze this process data as the students are working with the code, trying to fix it, trying to find the error first, and then fixing it. The process data gets really messy and noisy because now we don't know anymore which click is the important one. Maybe is a mouse click important on a certain feature, or maybe not? Is there some elements that we can ignore? Question of research. Also, another problem is, I think we all have this experience. We might engage with a problem, try to fix it. In the beginning, we try certain things, but they don't make much sense. We try other things, and suddenly 3 or 4 minutes later, we do something that connects back to what we did in the beginning, and now we can integrate our understanding and with that knowledge from a few minutes ago, and now come up with a solution. So how do we analyze data that has these complex temporal dependencies and that has a lot of features in the data? That is complicated. There are multiple machine learning and statistical methods right now being tried, being tested, but researchers often do that within their own context with the tools that they're given, and not in a way that help us start to see what are similarities between different kind of tools, between different kind of approaches, different kind of data, to come up with a generalized research approach and framework. That has been a result from a literature review we have done for the British Journal of Education Technology. Second challenge, when it comes to designing these tasks, what my research has shown is already minute changes, small changes in the task design. For example, a slider instead of a drop-down menu or so impacts how students engage with the task. So impacts how they express their problem-solving competencies, let's say, and in turn, what they learn from it. So now the task is not a neutral thing anymore. It is almost like in quantum physics. The way we measure influences what we measure. And our understanding of how the task design influences process and what we can learn is still like not in its infancy, but it's in development. And our goal in the end is to come up with tasks that help us measure students' competencies that generalize to other ones as well. Not just like, I don't want to just say like, hey, these kids really know how to debug in Carol. No, I want to be able to say these kids developed the skills or competencies for debugging in general. How to do that? Again, question of research. And again, it necessitates a platform where we can try different task designs, within application and across application. The third challenge, how to provide actionable information to the teacher. What is information that is necessary and useful for them? Well, one is, of course, as Emma showed, who is where in their progress, who was able to solve a task, who wasn't. But then the interesting questions for the teacher are, why weren't they not able to solve the task? Or why were they? What are common misconceptions? What are common challenges I can address? The way I think about dashboards is not necessarily what predominantly has to be done. Predominantly, dashboards are sort of these like cockpits where you get all the information for the teacher, they keep it for themselves, and then they go to the students. Another way to think about it is to say, well, the teacher is still the expert who knows how to interpret certain data and results. Let's keep the expert in the loop, but let's create dashboards that structure the information about what students did in a way that they can share it with the students too. For example, programming task, they have different solutions. Let's group those together in a way that teachers and students can look at what are similarities between these student solutions, what are differences. Let's talk about the different kind of approaches.
Great. Thank you so much for that, Engin. Let's bring in education consultant Tatiana Laganá again, because Tatiana, you were involved in implementing a PILA pilot study in Brazil, and Engin obviously outlining a lot of issues and challenges there. What are the big challenges you saw?
Okay, so I will bring some challenges before having those tools. So the first one that I would like to mention is infrastructure. So here in Brazil, we can mention that in some regions, schools may lack the necessary infrastructure, such as the reliable internet connectivity. So Brazil is a very large country, and I know that reflects some other country as well. So then a second challenge would be teachers may face some challenges in acquiring the necessary skills to integrate those digital tools into their teaching methods. So I would say that for some educators, more traditional ones, we can say that they may be resistant to adopt some digital technologies, viewing them as a distraction and not as an intelligent learning aid. Then we can come to budget. So acquiring and maintaining those digital tools can be expensive for some regions. And the last one, I think that those digital tools need to be currently culturally and linguistic sensitive to incorporate different educational contexts. So they have to be adopted for different regions in the world, so that the students feel in the digital world as they feel and they live in the real world, let's say. So I would mention those as challenges.
Thank you for that, Tatiana. Anuska Ferrari from the European Commission. Let's go back to you. Within the EU, many countries have been building their own digital education platforms. Has there been much collaboration, or have countries largely acted independently of each other?
So we thank you for this question. This is an interesting one. So we have tried as Commission to bring together the different national initiatives. Obviously, you know, our motto is united in diversity, and there is a beauty in that, in the fact that every member state is not only obviously responsible and competent when it comes to education and training, but there is also you know, an added layer of the fact that we speak different languages, we have different needs, we have different curricula. So there has been a tendency for different member states in developing national or even at times regional platforms. We're seeing, however, not really an upsurge of cooperation, but some tentative of cooperation. And I'm telling you for different strands and different aspects. So, for instance, there is a cooperation when it comes not only to the creation of the platform, but to the understanding that goes beyond this platform. And this is, to me, you know, in a way, a challenge and a solution, if you want. So it's not just about the content that's provided through this platform, but also about the practices. And here I'm getting back as well to what Tatiana was saying, you know, regarding the skills, especially of teachers. So it's not just about having the tool, but knowing how to use this tool. And member states are exchanging quite intensively on how this is possible. Now, we have been doing a feasibility study this year that was about digital education content in the EU on state of play and policy options. So I would suggest the audience, if they're interested, to look into that, because it could provide some insights on the different challenges that there are in this field. And here we're talking about content in a large way. I think that what we are trying to do here at the European level is not just to look into what member states are doing, not just trying to you know, bring together solutions, because at times it doesn't work when it comes you know, at the level of the union. But what we are trying to do is nurturing this exchange between member states, and in particular the exchange of the practices. We are doing that in several ways. I'll just mention one thing. So we have established a year and a half ago the Digital Education Hub, which is a community of practice that is open to everyone that is willing, you know, to be part of this community and have exchanges with other practitioners or researchers or policymakers about digital education. And we think that this aspect, of co-creation and knowledge sharing and working together on topics of interest for many is really supporting the uptake, which to me is one of the challenges. So when I think about challenges for the adoption of this platform, I think about three. One is the uptake that I just talked about. The other is the market, and the third one is how to move from a product to a practice.
Thank you. Thank you, Anuska, for that. We are running fairly low on time, and we've got quite a few questions from the audience. So I'm going to try and rattle through a few of these questions. Any of the panelists, please raise your hand using the raise your hand icon if you want to answer. And let's try to keep your answers relatively concise because, like I say, we're running short on time. So first question, with the adoption of platforms like PILA that offer interactive learning coupled with built-in assessments, how might the role of traditional assessments evolve? And what implications does this have for standardized testing and personalized learning pathways? Would anyone on the panel like to have a go at that one? What would be the implications? Okay, Engin's hands up first, I think. Over to you.
I think, Anuska, I think you were first. Sorry about that.
Oh, forgive me. Okay, in that case, Anuska, after you.
Well, as you wish, I'll be brief on this. So I think that it's not the different technology that brings a different assessment, or not necessarily. So we have been talking about formative assessment for decades. I think it was in the 80s that Black and William wrote inside the Black Box, talking about formative assessment. And I think this is, underpinning the development that we're seeing today with PILA and with other innovative assessment methods. So I think the point is not how technology is changing the assessment, but how the need for a different assessment is facilitated through the use of new technologies. And I'll stop here.
Thank you, Anuska. Engin, would you agree with that?
Yeah, very much so. And I think I would add maybe another way of looking at it too is I like this term system of assessment. So I don't think traditional assessment will go away, not at all, because they do measure some valuable things. But because of the complexity of the competencies you want to look at that have been opened up with the technologies too, we will not be able to just have one kind of assessment. So the system of assessment will involve traditional assessments, will involve more complex tasks, will involve formative assessments as well. And so the question is how to orchestrate those and coordinate those and make them work together to create a coherent picture of student learning. That is the interesting challenge here.
Thank you for your answer there, Engin. Another question which has been sent in open to the whole panel. The question is, what methods and assessments are commonly used to measure cross-cultural adaptability as a key mechanism for international benchmarking? Would anyone on the panel, if you'd like to raise your hand, have a go at that one? None of them. That's not a good look, is it? And, I could have a go at answering this question, but forgive me to the person who's answering it. Honestly, it would not be a particularly comprehensive or knowledgeable answer. So let's move on to the next question then. It's a question about internet access. Using digital tools is all very well and good in countries where there's widespread internet access, but in many countries, that's simply not the case. So is it fair to say that these kinds of assessments could lead to a greater digital divide, which we already see in other aspects of education? Anuska, over to you.
Yeah, thank you very much for this question and for raising this point. I think this was the point that I was actually making in my first intervention. And this, in my view, can only be solved with specific regulations. So this is why it is important to have national or regional or local strategies that look into not only high quality digital education, but also, and at the same time, inclusive digital education. We have two kinds of digital divide. One is about the tools and the infrastructure. The second one is about digital skills. So I think it is important not just to look at the internet connection and the availability of devices, but also to look at the digital skills and supporting the development of digital skills of teachers and students alike.
Thank you for that, Anuska. Another question here. Are there certain aspects of using technology in assessments which are more popular than others? Are there certain areas where you're seeing more resistance in the tests that you've done? Anyone like to have a go at that one? Engin, hand up, over to you.
Sure, thank you. I think there's multiple dimensions. What we see is that technology is being used most oftenly in the ways aligned with the kind of teaching or learning philosophy one already has. So when one already has a certain view of how things should be taught, you will use technology aligned with that, or you will find technology that allows you to do that. So what we see often is, of course, the question of like how to have more of a maybe frontal teaching approach, the reductionist approach of like training different aspects. The challenge is how to help teachers, but also in the use of technology by students, how to open up sort of themselves to the idea that maybe we engage, we let the technology help us be more open to letting students solve problems without, for example, giving them instructions of how they should do it or breaking it down. And that is a bit of a challenge that we have seen, that there is technologies designed to, for example, allow for more constructivist approaches, to really how to make that possible, and what are the factors that influence how that's being used. That has been something we have seen is a bit of a tricky thing. I hope this answers the question.
Thank you so much for that, Engin. It certainly does. Look, this has been a fascinating discussion with lots of great ideas and initiatives discussed. We are running fairly low on time. We do have just enough time for a quick final thought from each of you, though. Here's a question for you all. You can take it one at a time. Lots of people are building digital learning and assessment tools, but what would be your number one tip to ensure those tools are effective and sustainable? Tatiana Laganá, if we can hear from you first.
So I think it's ongoing professional development. So we needed ongoing professional development. Is really appreciated to guarantee the inclusion of those digital tools, and just to maintain them in the system. So I would say that.
Thank you very much, Tatiana. Anuska Ferrari, the same question to you. What would be your number one tip to ensure that digital learning and assessment tools are effective and sustainable?
Purposefulness. So digital tools, they don't have to be just shiny, lovely objects, but they have to be purposeful. They have to lead to better quality of learning outcomes, for instance.
Short and sweet. Thank you very much. And last but not least, Engin Bumbacher from the University of Teacher Education, Vaud. What should developers focus on doing to ensure their work is sustainable and effective, Engin?
I think it's similar to what Anuska said. Have a vision, be clear about your pedagogical and didactic vision that you have, and have that be the North Pole and not the technology that you have. And the second one is fast, iterative cycles of testing in practice with teachers, and be humble about your technology design and open to the kind of feedback that you might get in that.
Thank you so much for that. Be humble about your design. There you go. That's all we have time for. If you want to learn more about what we've been discussing, or Digital Education Outlook 2023 as a whole, then please do go to the OECD website, or just search PILA OECD in your search engine. You'll be able to see the kind of innovative assessments that are now going to be available for teachers. You can, of course, also go to the web address pilaproject.org and sign up, as it was suggested earlier on by Emma. Thank you to all our panelists today, to Engin Bumbacher, Professor of Computer Science Education at Switzerland's University of Teacher Education, Vaud. Thank you to education consultant Tatiana Laganá from Brazil, and from Brussels, Anuska Ferrari from the European Commission. And of course, right at the start as well, we had the OECD's Emma Linsenmeyer, who gave that presentation right at the start. Thanks to her as well. That's it from us. Thank you to the production team and to all of you who joined this session today. Next up is a session on generative AI in education, which is packed full of info about how AI tools can support learners and teachers. So please do check out that session. It starts in a few minutes' time. All the best.
Towards that.
Okay.
Stefan, sorry, who's actually moderating this
I
one?
am.
You are fantastic. We just we're thinking about the run of order, right, Vasiliki? The run of order of the speakers.
Yeah, so that would be a Dragon first, and then Vicky, and then Sana, and then Addison. So